Do you guys remember when like Divergent came out, Hunger Games came out, Maze Runner came out? Like they all came out over the course of like 5 years, and it was like a little much. I mean, I still kind of like, I'm a sucker for those movies, but I think we've had a long enough break, so now people are gonna be super excited to go see this one.
It's been a little break. There certainly was a wave there for a while.
I feel like there are even more that probably didn't even go on my radar because there were so many during that time.
Well, yeah, there was also like The Giver, which was like, teenage protagonist. But I actually watched a video on YouTube recently, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. But she was basically talking about that like teenage dystopian novel show,
Mm-hmm.
like genre era we had. Because that was kind of like when we were leaving high school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, yeah, it was, you had the Hunger Games, and then you had Divergent, and then you had the Maze Runner, and then you had The Giver. But they said like she was basically talking about like where did it go and why did it disappear, kind of, because it was like you had so much and then nothing. Um, and apparently it was because there was a lot of social turmoil happening with like Black Lives Matter and people getting shot and things like that. And so it kind of, if you look at all those movies, it's generally hot young white protagonist. And so they felt like the people who were consuming the material at the time had kind of like fallen off of that because we were having our own stuff happening in real life.
Huh.
So that was like kind of what they, that I guess that was like one of the theories they had why it like
That
disappeared for a while.
That's a good theory. I'm reading this book called The Wanderers, and it's basically about like a disease taking over the planet, whatever. And I used to read books like that a lot, like these weird sci-fi where some virus would come to Earth and they have to figure it out, blah, 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 or like The End of Men, where all the men are dying, whatever. But when the pandemic came, I like could not read like I was like, I'm done with these books. Like it's too real now, or like there's too much in the real world that like it's not enjoyable to like read about it. So now I'm finally reading one of those books again. And I was like, it's been a while since I've felt like I've wanted to. So that maybe could be like where it's too much happening in reality. Or like you said, like not having the right people like as the protagonist or whatever. Yeah, I could see that.
The stuff,
It
Yeah.
looked
yeah.
I think the girl they have who's gonna play like I've never read the book, but like the opposite of Snow, like the girl with the dark hair. I think she's from West Side Story. If
Rachel
I'm
Zegler, Snow
Yeah,
White.
she's
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. Okay, then it's the same girl. She was amazing in West Side Story, and she's so beautiful. I'm gonna watch it just to see her in it.
Yeah, it's exciting to see where her career is going. She's just in Shazam, Fear of the Gods. Yeah, some of the stuff it migrates from the screen to real life, and therefore becomes a little less maybe palatable for general entertainment consumption. Although I feel a lot of this stuff has also kind of made its way more into the streaming space, stuff like Squid Game. I don't know.
Oh,
They're
There's
gonna do, there's talks that there's gonna be an American Squid Game, and I'm like, that's what we don't want. We don't need an American one, Netflix. Please don't.
no, I love exactly how Squid Game is. There was another one
yeah.
called Alice in Borderland, which is similar
Yeah.
to Squid Games, but they're like playing cards. There will, I don't know. Did you see it or hear about that one?
I've seen like trailers and stuff for it because I know like the main character is, I think, is actually a guy, but when they're in the game they're like a girl, I think, or something like that.
I didn't watch the whole thing. I just know that that was like a similar vibe. And I just feel like some of those movies are better set in like, I think that one might be in Tokyo. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't need the American Squid Games. I
Well,
can just
like,
watch, I'll watch Survivor or something
well,
like
like
on,
what the American Squid Game is going to be like, oh yeah, it's, we're going to pay your medical debt. Like, you have to fight for your life for your medical debt to get paid.
imagine your
Okay.
college loans are going to be forgiven. Like if you jump into
So
the pot of
crazy.
acid, like
Yeah,
I,
I don't think it would translate the same to an
I,
American audience.
I I have people, I have friends who will joke like the cars will be driving. They're like, oh, I would love to get hit by one of those cars because then I could pay off my like college loans. I'm like, oh,
Like Snowpiercer, that was director,
Hmm.
Oscar-winning director Bong Joon-ho. One of his previous
good.
films, before he did Parasite, was the film Snowpiercer, and that's since had a TV series as well. So another
Isn't that
example.
the one where they were like eating people.
Yeah, about
That was
the train.
yeah. Okay, I watched the movie, but it's been like, years and years and years. It's basically like there's this big long train, and that's where everyone lives.
Oh, I
And
saw a
like
trailer for that.
all the different cars are like the different people, like
Classes,
yeah, the
Yeah.
right?
classes of people. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I want
I
to say
did,
they were like eating kids or something crazy.
Well, they
I
eat
never
It's
bugs,
been
saw
a
it.
but yeah,
yeah.
they
It's been a
probably
long
also,
time. Yeah.
yeah, they might throw in dead corpses too into the
Ugh.
food repurposing,
Yeah. There's some
system.
cannibalism going on
Who
because
knows?
like they don't realize it, and then the guy
Oh,
who's the hero goes through the cars.
was that a plot point that like the rich people like dine on kind of young uh children from the poor class or
Ew.
something as a delicacy? I can't remember if that was a
Yeah,
plot point,
I
but
want to say there were kids getting eaten. I don't know if they were used for that reason or if they were people that died.
it was
Um,
yeah,
but
depressing
yeah, it
dystopia in
was
that.
yeah, it's one of those like class conversation society movies.
Anyways, well, speaking of relatable, I figured today's topic would be great to cover on the show because it's a new series premiering on Max, aka HBO Max. The I guess the release officially for the platform Max, which is sort of the combination of HBO and the Discovery Plus, I think, service are now being combined now that those networks have merged. But yeah, it's a brand new series animated called Fired on Mars. It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair. Speaking of David Bowie, which is another offering on HBO Max recently available, the documentary Moon Age Daydream, which I recommend. But yeah, we'll get into some discussion today on this new animated series on HBO Max. So thank you both for joining me on this episode of the Thodcast Conversations about Animation. I'm Philip Elke up here in northern Minnesota, and welcome to the month of May, a big new month of movies, but we're talking TV. Joined by, thank you so much, Bridget, for coming on the show, and Jody, and both of you are joining from the land of the masters. Things
Mhm.
going on. You're both in kind of the Augusta general area. So how was that? All the activity for that, I guess.
It was busy.
Yeah.
I avoid so Washington Road is like a very big major road that kind of stretches all the way to North Augusta, which is technically South Carolina, to the
Mhm.
lake. So it's a long road. But so the last half, like before you get to our downtown and stuff, is where the Masters is, and the Masters owns like everything there. And I avoid that area like the plague. So it gets busy, but a lot of people leave and they rent out their house. And so people that live here either leave or they just avoid that area like the plague,
Yeah.
which is what I do. Which it's gotten better. It used to be pretty bad. Like the interstate would get backed up, the whole road would be backed up. But now it's like it's a well-oiled Masters machine down there.
Mhm.
They've bought out. They want to make that whole area like just a Masters area. So they keep buying up
Yeah.
parcels of land.
It's wild. Have you
Yeah,
ever golfed or there or been to the like resorts and stuff where they hold it?
it's pretty
Yes.
like exclusive, but I've never been there. Bridget, don't you have to like
Okay.
pay quite a bit of money to like get on the course? Or how does that work?
Yes. It's yes and no. So technically, you're supposed to get so you can sign up for the lottery every year. I imagine people who are really rich can probably buy tickets because they can just buy them directly. So you can do a raffle and you basically get tickets that way. Or you find people who have them or buy them, sell them, and you can get them that way. I've gotten to go because I had friends who like their families had tickets and I would just like they would go in and then they'd come out and I'd go in kind of thing. But also I've worked so because I've lived here my whole life,
Mhm.
I've worked many a master's weeks on that strip of Washington Road. So I've worked for a golf simulator company and they got tickets every year. So I've gotten to go a few times and
Sweet.
it's busy. It's very pretty. And I believe the people who work at the Nationals during Masters Week, they get to like go. in some kind of way as well, for free, I'm pretty sure, because they're working there.
All right. Well, it's fun scene in this show to tie it back as awkwardly as possible, but involving the little robot that has the like iPad attached to it, and the guy's doing like virtual reality golf from Mars. That was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Zooming
he's like, I
in,
wish I could be there. Wish I could be there with you.
playing like we've all seen those arcade games where you use a trackpad to hit a golf ball. And he's basically doing that, but it's attached to or the robot's actually holding a real golf club. So it'd be fun to see how that would work in real life. But yeah,
Well, that's kind of like that company I worked for. That's
oh,
kind of what the simulators were like when you go to Top Golf and you hit it
sure,
and it's like, oh, this is how hard you hit it and where it went. That's kind of what it is. That's kind of what the
yeah,
company was. And but people could like put them in their house or their business. And so then you had like a Top Golf in your living room.
that'd be
Pretty
sweet.
interesting.
Um, anyways, you both. So currently, as of recording, there are 4 episodes. Have you seen all of them, both of you?
Yeah, I watched all of them
Mhm.
today.
Yeah, they were
Okay,
pretty
good.
quick, like a pretty quick watch.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's
I think they're like 30 minutes, maybe.
hmm They move quickly, kind of breeze right through. Probably right around the 30-minute runtime. I didn't check specifically, but back in the days of commercial TV, it was always that consistent, like 22, 23-minute runtime.
I
And
like that they're doing the slow release instead of like a 14 episode binge because
yeah,
I like having something to look forward to and being forced to look forward to it. So it looks like they drop like maybe 2 episodes a week. Is that what it's looking like their schedule is?
I think just one.
Or just one,
Um,
yeah, on Thursdays?
Thursdays. It does vary sometimes. I know, like I think with at least the Bad Batch, which was a Star Wars animated show on Disney Plus, there were a couple of weeks this latest season where they dropped multiple episodes in a week. But yeah, it's I don't know, it's a new series that I really like the animation style. Yeah, and it moves quickly. Like the it's based on like a short film from 2015 or 2016, like a little pilot project. It looks like these writers, the creators, are kind of fresh faces in the TV world. So um, the credits aren't super deep on either of them.
I did see the guy who did the voice in the short also does a voice in the show.
Okay,
Yeah, he's Brand. I guess it was just Jeff, the main character in the
okay,
short. And so but that actor is Brandon
okay.
in the series.
Yeah, he's one of the bosses who's back on Earth. The other
Yeah.
sort of main boss character is Darren, Tim Heidecker. Yeah, Sean Wing plays Brandon. Yeah,
Which
Nate Sherman and Nick Vokey are the creators. But yeah, Bridget, you had something else?
Oh, I was gonna say the Brandon character is like having worked in corporate
Mhm.
companies, like he is corporate. That is what he was. I watched it and I was like, man, I hate that guy because he's like, it's so fake. It's all so fake. I was like, man, that is the fakest character ever. Because honestly, when I was watching it, I'm like, are we supposed to like Jeff? Or are we not supposed to like Jeff? I wasn't quite sure.
Mm.
He's
But
kind of pathetic. Like I love him
yeah,
and I like want him to like do the best, but like he's a graphic designer and they're the worst like graphic designs anyone could ever have. I think you're supposed to like secretly be rooting for him, but at the same time he's so like lame that you also can understand why he's like lost in the mix of the big corporation. Like he's kind of just like another nobody like walking around the floors, but I'm rooting for him. I like him.
yeah. Like in
But
the
he is
beginning, I was
pathetic.
like, yeah, in the beginning, I was like, am I supposed to like this character? Like, I didn't hate him, but I was like, he's kind of annoying. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to like him or not. But honestly, I will say, so I have my degree in communication, and a big part of that was graphic design and marketing, which I have a background in. And I was like, when he was like, oh, we don't need graphic designers, anyone can graphic design. And I was like, I resent that.
But you can tell that is something they would say. Yeah, his like clip art
Yeah,
that
his designs were not great.
I know, like no wonder
Oh,
they fired him. And like I had thought so like he's obviously on Mars and I thought it was like his little girlfriend back at home, who's also the worst, but I guess it's his wife. I'm like,
Mhm.
right? It's his wife.
Or a partner. They've been together 3 years. His girlfriend technically, but like
Oh, girlfriend.
she's
Okay.
planning on moving to Mars eventually.
I think she also doesn't know if she thinks he's pathetic or lovable. Like she also seems to not really care one way or the other about this guy.
It's an
Yeah, and
odd
that's like,
relationship. Yeah.
well, that's why I was like kind of I'm like, so what was he like before he went to Mars? Because like he had a girlfriend for 3 years, like he
And
had a
she's
life.
pretty.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, like he had a job in marketing, and now he goes to Mars and everyone hates him. He's super annoying. But I mean, I guess that could be like, your life changes, and life changes could make you a different person, maybe.
Like a crisis, midlife crisis type of thing.
Yeah,
He
because he's like
seems
going through it.
mid 30s. It looks like he has a resume that shows he has like
yeah.
16 years of experience. I guess his way of dealing with the crisis is to kind of fall apart, whereas Hannah, his girlfriend, has gotten into yoga. She sends him a sand
Zen
garden,
garden,
Zen
yeah.
garden, yeah. But yeah, he just can't really deal with the pressure of his situation, which is pretty funny. It's a great little satirical take on like self-help, and it's obviously a workplace comedy, a la The Office, but the sci-fi, very very topical, relevant sci-fi flavor with all the interest in space travel currently, rocketry, and potential colonization of Mars. So I just thought this was a great kind of idea for a concept for a show, and it looks really good too.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of places that they can take this. And I think, I mean, to touch on like him being like, desperate or whatever, and like kind of like a loser, like he does have some tenacity. I mean, like he's lost, I mean, we're on episode 4 now, and he's like lost a million things, but he does kind of keep plugging at it and finding hope and trying to like reinvent himself, which I feel like is really relatable. I've never actually worked in like a
Mhm.
corporate culture, but I could imagine that being in that type of space where you're sort of like dominated by sort of like a soulless ladder to climb. It would be
Mhm.
like kind of difficult to like pull yourself up every day and give it your all. And I mean, even when he was fired at the beginning, I thought it was really cute. He'd like go into the meetings and be like, "Hey y'all, you need any water? You need any help?" Like he's trying, and like
Mhm.
you got to give it to people who try. So even though like yeah, he's not exactly going to go to yoga or whatever, like he does, he gives his heart to it. I like that.
Well, it's like you're saying like the self-help stuff with it, like, yeah, dude, get a hobby, do this. And he's like, okay. So he gets every hobby. He's like, I'm gonna do everything possible. And like as he's spiraling into a depression. And honestly, it's so funny because like with me and like my ADHD, people are like, oh, why don't you just try a routine? And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. You've solved my life's problems. That's it. I needed a routine. Oh my God, thanks. And so I'm like, it's so funny that he was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna get a hobby. I'm gonna get every hobby. And in the end, it was like, yep, that didn't work either. Back to the tank.
The best hobby that he discovers is like labeling
Yeah.
items. That is the first real chuckle I think I got out of it. I was sort of on the fence, and then he gets this label machine, and he's like labeling the soda pop, and like the dark roast coffee, dark roast. And for some reason, have you guys ever used a label machine? It is very fun,
I
like
have
to
one.
make little labels. And I was like,
Yeah.
that would be me. Like if I had no time and I just had like a label machine, I probably would have done the same thing. He's like labeling computer.
Yeah.
I, you know,
It's yeah,
so that
old
was one of his
school.
hobbies. That was my favorite.
I like he was like, let me do your label survey. I need to see how you'd label.
And they have like limited resources up in Mars, so like clearly that's some type of issue because he's like he's kind of scolded for using too
Mhm.
many labels because they only have a certain amount.
Mhm.
And that's why I didn't really understand, why they would have graphic designers up there if they're like on this big limited. I feel like that is definitely something you could do from planet Earth, graphic design, right?
Mhm.
So that's why that's even making it more hilarious to me, like why they even brought him up there in the first place.
I think he's
Yeah.
like an internal one. So he isn't like doing marketing like for the Marsley company. He's like doing internal like
Menus
graphic
and like
design, yeah, like
posters.
menus and like that, like the Arizona night thing, making like posters and flyers. And I'm like, what? Like, and honestly, I will say this about corporate America, no one come for me. They will make up just jobs that don't really mean anything just to have it. They're like, you know what? We don't have anyone that makes just the menus for the internal company. We should have someone for that. And I've known people who worked in those roles, and they're like, yeah, I just, walk around and talk to people and make flyers for the clubs in the office. And I'm like, all right, I want
Nice.
that job. How do I not talk to
Exactly.
how do I not talk to people? I want to
I've
do
never
that.
I've told Ryan before, like I've never worked in an office, but I would love to be like a
Okay.
personality hire and just like cheer people up and cheer them on and like be in the office because I really like those shows like The
Mhm.
Office or Office Space. Like I there's something kind of like if you've never worked in that space, sort of like charming about it, like this well-contained thing. Actually, to speak on the style of it, I really like the animation style, how it's kind of like muted colors, sort
Mhm.
of minimalist, but still like very detailed, like his little bag of chips and all his little stuff. But compared to a lot of like adult cartoons, this one's not so like bright and loud. So I really liked that. But yeah, I always joke about wanting to be a personality hire someday in an office. Do you guys like the
Yeah.
animation? Like kind of
Yeah.
this 2D?
They do a good job of providing a bit of like a glossy, or it's got a certain analog feel to it. There's I don't know, not a gauzy filter. It's just sort of gussied up a bit to look a little more traditional, like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. It's kind of similar to it. It definitely fits within the visual language of like a King of the Hill. It makes a lot of sense. I don't think Mike Judge had anything to do with this series. It is produced by Luke Wilson, who voices the main character Jeff. And Luke Wilson, was the lead in Idiocracy, which was created by Mike Judge, who's also the creator of, or Idiocracy is a feature film directed by Mike Judge, who created shows like King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead. So it seems to follow a certain tradition of comedy and aesthetics that really line up nicely with just kind of these um, commenting on the mundane, on kind of the just questioning, I guess, the norms of our otherwise assumed reality that in which we live.
I think
Yeah.
it's like a crossover of like The Office with The Martian, the Matt Damon movie
Oh, I
where he
Yeah,
never
goes
saw
to
that.
Mars.
that's
Oh
right.
yeah, he goes to Mars by himself and like has a little like existential crisis because he's there so long by himself.
Yeah, I would
Because he has to like
imagine.
set it up for everyone to come there later.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like that mix.
That's
Um, and I do like the animation because they for the most part everyone looks like realistic person, not
Hmm.
like crazy bulbous features, and everyone looks like a caricature of a real person. Um, but yeah, it's like that. It kind of reminds me of those like movies mixed together. It's like because when you see like movies on Mars or movies in space, everything's like futuristic and fancy and cool. And this is like, you know what? What if we all just went to Mars and it's like exactly the same as Earth? We just can't
Yeah,
breathe outside. You're still working at your boring job in your cubicle,
you
making
would assume.
flyers.
Yeah, you would assume like, oh my gosh, we're in Mars. We're gonna have these incredible, crazy like situations to uphold, and I really like that. And I really like how the humor style is like very kind of like environmental, situational. It's not like
Mhm.
like super silly. Like I don't know. I do like Family Guy, but it's kind of like gags. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like jokes and
it's
punchlines.
whereas this is
It's
more like very dry. Like
it's
I
a
don't know if
good
the
grounded
it's
narrative.
yeah, where it's like it's a relaxed humor. Like I don't know,
Mhm.
like you said, the social commentary on like they're working in an office in Mars, like that alone is like a bizarro thing, but they don't like push it. Like they're not trying to make it crazy. Like it just
Yeah.
is.
Jody, did you watch BoJack Horseman?
I have not seen that one. I think
Okay.
I saw another one who has a similar voice, Archer. It's like the same voice, right?
Was that also Will Arnett? I
I
have
could be
not
wrong.
watched. Yeah, I haven't
I've
watched
only
Archer.
I've only seen bits and pieces. Like I feel like I am one of those people who would really love adult cartoons, but not a lot of them have like connected with me because they are a little like much. But this one I'm really enjoying. Like even if we don't talk about the next 4 episodes, like I'm gonna finish the series. I think it's cool.
H. John Benjamin is the voice of Archer,
Okay.
and also the dad on Bob's Burgers. Apparently,
He has a really like recognizable voice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I've only seen like an episode or two of BoJack Horseman, but I
Yeah.
have watched Archer.
What about Idiocracy?
Mm-mm.
I've
Okay.
seen that.
Okay, Bridget.
Oh,
Yeah.
you gotta watch it. It's an interesting like commentary on society, especially when you look at it in like comparison sometimes to what we're also, living currently. Sometimes it's
Similar.
kind of crazy.
It's set in a alternate future, as is Fired on Mars. Clearly, this Fired on Mars. I mean, it could almost be like current day, but told as though certain events in our past transpired differently, to where now we have already an established colony on Mars, and there's a certain well enough developed presence to where they are now bringing just ordinary people and have built a business complex. And yeah, it's just a standard cubicle farm workplace now that they have there. And I mean, if we ever get to that point, it'll probably be several decades out from where we are currently. So who knows how things would be done by the time we've gotten to that point. But yeah, in this show, it is kind of just funny how plain and ordinary everything seems, despite the very futuristic setting, the sort of Total Recall style premise.
What we need to talk about a little bit, because like it is a very plain space, is what is this like sleepy tub portal thing that they get put in as punishment? Like, is it actually supposed to be killing them? What, like when these people get in trouble, like
Yeah.
they're put to sleep in a tank.
I have a theory for that. Yeah.
What's your theory?
Well, they are testing various technologies at Marsley, including things like cryogenics. So for like deep space travel, the theory is that you would want to freeze people in sort of a suspended animation state. And so this is somewhere between that and just kind of extended hibernation. It's a tank where you're floating in water, and it's not as extreme as like a cryogenic tube like in the Alien movies, but they're just testing this sort of dangerous sort of experimental, highly
On the
experimental technology.
insubordinates. Yeah.
Yeah, they just need anyone to be a test subject, so they'll pay you if you want to risk your life to hop in these tanks, I guess.
Well,
and
they
I think
use it.
it's. I'm sorry. Well, I was gonna say I think it's kind of commentary on like how corporate
Yeah.
kind of like churns people out. If you're not like a high-ranking person, they're like, yeah, you're expendable.
Yeah, like if you're not a cog in the wheel. And like the problem is like on Mars, because he's kind of like, okay, like not that he was going to quit, but it's like if you leave the corporation, they're not going to provide you with like food or housing. You're going to be stuck on Mars, like with no, I mean,
With
in this
nothing, yeah.
exactly, this harsh environment. And I do feel like just from stories people have told me of working in like larger corporation settings, as it is kind of like that. Like if you start to push against the grain, there's another line of people that can be the next graphic designer or whatever. So it does kind of feel like that. Like you want to you want to advocate for yourself, but really they don't. Typically, they don't care. Like you go survive on Mars is what they'd probably say.
But yeah, I mean, I will say like they like, and they're always like, oh, we want the movers and the shakers, and then you move and you shake, and they're like, ooh,
not like
no,
that.
no, I don't want discourse. I just want you to have good ideas that I can take credit for. Speaking from experience, and it is one of those things like you leave and they're like, oh yeah, like if you leave, they're just gonna replace you. And so
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I think it's very much like, oh yeah, we can put like the people who are being bad or like people we can just, we don't need in the testing cryo sleep to see if they die or not. Because like technically, he only died technically because the doctor was in there being naughty and hitting things.
Yeah, drinking his little wine, like,
Yeah, he was injured when they put him in there. The airlock broke, and so he got sucked out, and so like he had never even
oh
woken
yeah.
up from that incident, and then they put him in there, and then I guess like they didn't properly flush his bowels before they did
Oh
it,
my
so
God.
that
He was just floating in poop water, basically.
yeah,
And he's like
so
crying blood when he comes out. That was
uh,
as he like
rough.
gets his next job and he like appears in the door and there's like blood trickling down his cheeks.
Yeah, well, because so it is an interesting situation because if you get fired from your job, you just I don't know, you'll go on unemployment, try to get a new job or whatever. Um, but he's not on Earth, so Marsley is the only employer. So he has to get like a stipend or some way of surviving while he's there. They'll still feed him and stuff. But if he starts to show some resistance to the idea of being um, put to use by being this tank test subject. And once he does that, then the higher Brandon and Darren are like, well, you've got your living situation to where that's when they start to play that card of like you don't want your food allowances to get cut off or your living space to get uh, you know taken away from you. So it's yeah, it's a lot of these weird, awkward situations of they're dressing up and tailoring their language, these bosses, to as um soft and it's the typical corporate speak. It's the veiled
Veiled threats.
yeah, threats exactly.
Yeah, they're like, ooh, we're gonna say this in a way that you think we're being nice, but we're really being crazy.
Uh,
Like,
and
I
Yeah.
just want to know
yeah.
where the HR department is in this building because, well, actually, I don't even know because maybe what they say isn't actually against the rules. Like, Bridget has worked in this like environment. Philip, have you ever worked in like a corporate
Yeah,
space?
not to this
Me
extent. Yeah,
neither.
Dreamspiration, where he eventually becomes an
Inspiration.
intern. Yeah, that's the name for their HR department. Yeah, it's I mean, if there's only one company on Mars that's running the whole show, then things can get a little loose. But yeah, the whole farce of corporate speak is sort of I'm sure if you're used to addressing people in that way all the time, it it doesn't only affect your speech and your conduct around coworkers, but it probably infects these guys' thinking overall too. Like they're
Mhm.
probably operating in some kind of almost simulated reality at that level, or just in general, we kind of get the sense that people who occupy these positions of status within corporate America, within the structures of capitalism, like they're just very out of touch. And you can see why now, through these examples of everything they do is being put through this just extremely distorted filter.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see it with Reagan. Like Jackson really, like, literally has to gas her to with nitrous
Exactly.
Yeah.
oxide to make her a nice person.
Okay, I'm
She,
not gonna lie though. I
yeah,
would love like I'm self-employed or whatever. I would
yeah.
love to have somebody so desperate to please me that they would put gas in the air to calm me down before I read my emails. That guy, he's awesome. And I mean, you realize that he has some childhood trauma in like episode 3 that he was used to be like a very overweight
Uh-huh.
kid or something, but I like him a lot. I would hire him on the spot.
Yeah, I like Jackson. He was like, here, let me blow dry her hair. You're doing a bad job.
Yeah, she demands, a 30-minute tea ritual every day. It's pretty great.
The lemon water, but you can't
The-
touch the rind.
She makes that there's a moment where she makes a snide comment to Jeff about wanting water, and and it should just be assumed that she wants lemon water, and so she just gets weirdly agitated when he
Yeah, the way she says it back to him, she's like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like I just want something that's going to inflame my stomach and have no antioxidants and no." And he's like, "Okay, so plain water then?" She's like, "No, with the lemon."
Yeah, he's like, you need to refresh me. And she's like, I do the receiving, I don't do the refreshing. She's like, I'm not here to teach you nothing. And that's another thing I feel like with HR. So a lot of times, and I feel like people don't realize this, at least in most corporate structures, is that HR does not work for you, the employee. They work for the company. And like, yeah, like they're gonna protect the company unless it's like something, crazy, like sexual assault or something crazy like that. But 9 times out of 10, they want to protect the company because that's who they work for. And so like their HR department isn't even HR. They're like, the internal cheerleaders that have to convince everyone that they're happy and that they want to be there versus dying. So it's like they're not even like a real HR. Like that's what she said. She's like, we're the only reason that half these people haven't killed themselves. And so like, I guess that makes sense. They're more therapists and cheerleaders than they are like actual HR people.
I mean, you're so isolated. You'd be so lonely. Yeah, that would be such a epidemic that they'd be constantly dealing with, of course. So yeah, I love that this show digs into these crazy, psychological aspects of I mean, that's what a lot of these adult comedies are there for. BoJack Horseman, it's a similar case of a character struggling with depression, but he's got unlimited wealth and fame. He's Hollywood, a member of the Hollywood elite, but finds some way to screw up his life, whatever it takes, addiction and just broken relationships. But Jeff, he doesn't have the same kinds of luxuries that BoJack Horseman does, so his spiraling sort of manifests in a more, I guess, relatable fashion.
He does, yeah, it is relatable because he does have the internet, and when he's trying to create like Jeff 2.0 and like come up with a plan on how to better himself, I thought it was so funny because I don't know if you guys have ever Googled like how to be happier or like how to look better or something like that. You get so many like bogus like websites that pop up, and like one of it kind of like goes to his computer screen when he's like Googling, how to be the best I can be, blah, blah, blah. And it's like best deodorant quiz, like how to be hot by these next 6 steps, or like all these like really cheesy, like it's the scene I think in the 4th episode, but do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, take this quiz and find out if you can actually be happy, or like, I can't remember all of them, but that was so funny because that is exactly the shit that pops up when you try to Google stuff like that. It's like, oh, buy this like lotion and like you'll be happy because like the antioxidants or whatever. There's always just something random online like they're ready to sell you or get you to click on.
Yeah.
There was one that was like she was ugly and now she might be hot, and I was like, what? But and you see it. Honestly, I feel like they should have more social media within this as well, because like in groups, like people are always pushing like these like lotions and scrubs, and they're like, oh, it's going to get rid of your cellulite. And I'm like, no, it's not. These people are airbrushed. I'm like, just go to the gym. Cellulite's normal. Like, it's normal. But like people get sucked into it because they're like, yeah, that's what I want something that's going to fix it quick and little as work as possible as quickly as I can get it. And I'm like, you're just going to spend $60 on a lotion that does nothing but moisturize your body.
There's a moment where you see Darren even getting sucked into a mobile gaming ad. Do you remember that part? It's like the really busty lizard lady, and it's like a fantasy.
Oh yeah. He's like, I'm doing something.
That's when I think Jeff is confronting him about wanting to take
Carol's
the place.
Job.
Yeah, Carol. There was a gravity incident, so they figured out something with like artificial gravity here, because the gravity is more or less similar to Earth, whereas in reality, I think the gravity is kind of like half or even less than half of Earth's on Mars, maybe more like a quarter. So they'd be able to like jump around, super high within the offices at least. And then you see the episodes where Jeff is working outside and he's able to lift those rocks, just the huge rocks, basically the size of him, no problem. But
I mean, he starts to get jacked though. He's like, yeah, getting some muscle.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's like showing how, just a simple task and sort of being in that meditative state of, he's literally raking the earth, but it's not with a little garden. It's it's actually outdoors and with these giant rocks that he's sorting into piles. But he's doing that enough, and eventually, it's causing actual change in his life to occur, unlike a lot of these other quick fix solutions that he's been sucked into.
Yeah, he actually has to like have that change in lifestyle, and he has, I don't know if that's like his little helper, or who is that guy? Can you guys refresh me, like who his partner is once they start doing that?
It was like, it started with an S. So he is his assistant. Sluggo. Yeah, he is Sluggo's assistant.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a scene earlier in the series where he's sort of like in La La Land. I think he might be in the tank, but he's sort of having these like Lord of the Rings like moments, and he has this little helper riding like a pony with him.
Warlock.
Yeah, because he watches these like the Ring of Solomon like movies before he goes to bed. So he's sort of like, that is Lord of the Rings, right? He's sucked into that lore.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the animated Lord of the Rings, not the movies with the real people in it. The one that he was watching kind of reminded me of the like OG animated ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what that is.
He's always munching on his chips watching that, and then it sort of infiltrates into his world or his dreams.
Ralph Bakshi with the sort of janky animation. It's it's especially fitting for a TV level animation style. And I mean, I love the style here, like Life on Mars. It's a gorgeous looking show, in my opinion. Life on Mars.
It's really fluid. Like there's nothing super choppy. And granted, I know like other animated shows, they started a lot earlier with animation, but sometimes you start watching a newer show and it seems like they don't have the budget to have it so like clean and nice. Even I'm trying to think of the one, I think it's called like Northman or something on Netflix, but Up North. It's really like choppy. This is so smooth. Like I feel like
there are ones that are, I don't know,
it's almost like
they're the sort of shadow puppet style, like Flash animation, where it's a little too smooth. It's too computer simulated, the movement. I mean, there's a certain logic to using that in its own, right as a style. There were like the Fairly Odd Parents style of cut out characters, and it works really well in a context like that. But it's using the computer to fill in like the in-between frames, and that can turn kind of artificial looking, whereas this looks very traditionally hand-drawn frame by frame, and I like how they preserve that aesthetic. I don't know if they use shortcuts to get there, but if they did, there's maybe 8 ways using artificial reality now, or artificial intelligence, that you're able to simulate that in a very convincing manner. But I don't know if you've seen any of some of the more recent Scooby-Doo series on HBO Max.
The Velma thing?
Not that.
Don't get me started. I hate the new look of the Scooby-Doo.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
Jody, have you seen like clips of Velma?
No, but I've seen I've seen trailers for it, so I kind of get what you're saying.
I'm curious what you think of that animation style. Because that is like a lot more. Yeah.
I like this better. Like I don't like that kind of thing where it's almost like, I don't know how to explain it, where they're like running in place and then they move. Yeah. I don't know. I like this. I like the smoothness of this. I feel like this was very like realistic cartoon.
Yeah. I wonder, they must have just put in a little extra. I guess I don't know if the production value of Fired on Mars is such that like they're positioning it as a premium offering from Max for its debut or something along. But as much as I am enjoying it now, I mean, we have yet to see if this has the level of like cultural penetration that giggity something like a Family Guy or even Archer, BoJack Horseman. Like these are all kind of household names.
I had only heard of this show once before you guys brought it up, so I also feel like they haven't
Yeah.
really cultivated a super big audience at the jump. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys saw a lot of promotions of this series, but
Mhm.
I didn't at all. So like that also is gonna maybe hinder the
Yeah,
response. And not everybody has HBO Max on.
I've
I mean,
just
that's a whole
been
nother thing.
watching a couple shows on a weekly basis, Succession and Barry, and then this popped up underneath those, and I decided to check it out. Those other Scooby-Doo cartoons I was referencing are sort of some more recent series where they really try to mimic that classic Hanna-Barbera design, from the late 60s, early 70s. And they do a really good job of it. But it's just, it's the full 16:9 aspect ratio, just very clean looking. But it does look like a traditional hand-drawn show. And to me, this sort of matches sort of that the vintage style in a way. So that's
Yeah.
why I was kind of drawn to this particularly.
Well, when you brought it up, I thought you meant like the most recent reiteration that they have done of Scooby Doo, where everyone looks weird now. I thought that's what you meant. And I
Yeah,
was like, I don't like,
there's been so many.
they keep changing the way they look.
Yeah.
And I know it's because they're doing different animation styles, but I'm like, just take them back to what they looked like when they looked like people.
So this precise show I was thinking of is called Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. Every
Mm.
episode features like a celebrity guest. And I've watched maybe a couple episodes, but I didn't stick with it because it is kind of gimmicky in that way. It's clearly tailored for very young audience, it seems. So it looks
That's
great.
Yeah, so I looked it up. That is the animation style I prefer Scooby Doo in,
Yeah.
which is probably because I grew up with it looking like that. The way it looks now is no, I hate it.
Scooby-Doo and Guess Who. Like, yeah, I would just watch this basically for the vibes and the look.
The vibes. No, exactly right.
But yeah, I just haven't given it the time. I don't know. I could see myself getting more in the habit of putting stuff on just kind of in the background to to vibe out to all the random stuff that's out there. It's just most of my leisure time is spent kind of listening to podcasts or music or YouTube, watching YouTube or listening to YouTube, depending on how conducive a lot of this content is to just you know listening in passively, because so much of the stuff I do find on YouTube is basically just podcasts with video clips uh, attached to them. So yeah, like video essays and such, stuff like that. But other these more creative pieces of content, like Scooby-Doo show, like what a lot of people do, which is put on older sitcoms, Friends, Seinfeld, The Office, and just kind of have these on as passive viewing. It's definitely something that is a major part, I think, of modern media consumption, and it's not so much part of my habitual viewing, but I'm just wondering about you guys. Do you have like these comfort style, put it on in the
Yes.
background? Yeah.
Yeah, I switch between Seinfeld and The Office. So it's actually the two that you mentioned, and I think those are pretty common. And then around the Christmas season, I always get like the little wishes to start watching Gossip Girl, which is like, since I've seen it so many times, I can passively have it on. And I do a lot of my work just from the computer. So I'm basically just listening to it. But I'm not necessarily sure if that's a good habit for me to have. I don't know if there's ever been research on it, like having shows in the background and what that does to your attention span. So I've been trying to do it a little bit less because I've noticed my attention span has gotten shorter and shorter, whether that be TikTok or just like the chaos of life. Like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
So I will say for me is I have to have stuff on in the background I cannot be in a quiet space because my brain would not do that. So, so like my comfort shows. Well, and I also do that when I go to sleep because if I don't, then I will. If it's something new, I'll watch it and I'll stay up all night. Or I can't sleep in the dark either because I'll just sit there and think all night. I will sit there. I will think all night. My brain will just be like, "Oh my gosh, blah 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 blah. What are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing in a week?" Like it'll just keep talking.
It happens to me.
Yeah.
Periodically. The other night, I had a night like that, and it was after I'd like gone for a hike in the park nearby. So I'm trying to get a little more physical activity, but if I am not getting very consistent physical activity, I will compensate with caffeine. But the two combined make for an explosive combination that I was suffering from recently. So I've been on a sleep deficit for like past couple nights, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're like, this is a nice bout of insomnia that I have now.
Exactly.
That was like the other, this has nothing to do with it, but you're talking about like your circadian rhythm and stuff. On Mars, are like days and nights even the same, do you think? I just had all these random questions about Mars as I was watching it because I'm like, obviously they're living like it's Earth, and he's calling his wife without like there being some major time zone difference or whatever. So I was like kind of thinking to myself, I was like, how does this all actually work? Obviously, that's not a real question you need to ask during a cartoon, but
it's almost exactly one day. It's 1 day, 37 minutes.
Oh, well, then I guess it could work out to call your loved one.
Okay, Jody, yeah, we went to the same high school. Did you take psychology class? And of course that teacher, Mr. Ockery, he was big on things like circadian rhythm and stuff. He was a coach.
I took that class, and I really liked Mr. Ockery. I felt like he was a very real person teacher, if that makes sense.
He was very passionate. And I remember a detail of like how human circadian rhythm will, if we're deprived of exterior stimulus, for whatever reason, we seem to gravitate towards a 25-hour day. This is almost closer to what certain studies have revealed to be a more natural human circadian rhythm, close to a 25-hour day versus a 24-hour day. It's kind of an odd.
That is interesting. I just read something a little bit similar about how like there's the rhythm of life, like the 8-hour work day, the wake up time, the go to bed time, whatever, is all based off of like a male biological cycle, whereas like the female cycle changes within like 28 to 32 days. So like if the female cycle had like, defined our culture, there would be like hard weeks and light weeks and hard weeks, because the way like women energy levels go, it's like in a flux within 30 days. But the way like the male biology works, it's like a 24-hour clock that's like good in the morning, slow in the afternoon, good in the evening. Whereas like females, it's like based more off of like longer days. I was reading about that. So it's like, it's funny to think about like what our world would be like if we went off of our own rhythm, like whether it'd be a 25-hour work day, or if you're a girl, like maybe you'd work 2 good weeks a month and then you'd have 2 weeks off or something, it'd be kind of cool if we could.
That'd be perfect.
If you could erase the standard and sort of, I don't remember the exacts of it, but it is kind of weird to think about like how our bodies might have a different rhythm than like what our culture expects from us,
Well, and that's another thing. I've actually seen studies. So like in my case, and I don't know how it links to like other things like anxiety and depression. So people with ADHD typically have a different like rhythm. And so it's like we do better from like 11 a.m. to like 2 p or like, 11 a.m. to like 2 a.m. Whereas like people, I guess, who don't have it function better from like 7 a.m. to like 8 p.m. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense because I'm a night owl. And so is my mom. And so is my sister. And we all have ADHD. But then, I have my husband who does not have that. And he's like, I need to go to sleep at 8:30. And I'm like, well, I will go to sleep at midnight. And that's only because I force myself to. Like, and I have to force myself to go to sleep because I'm like, I have to like function during the day. And I have to take my kids places during the day, and school's at, 8 in the morning. And I'm like, this is dumb. This should all start at like 10.
Wow.
It would be so much easier for me if it started at 10.
And men, were built more like a block of wood, I guess. It's, there are not as many kind of hormonal things going on typically. So like we're more easily able to condition to just this rhythm that doesn't account for weekly or monthly fluctuations. So it makes sense that kind of just became standardized. Obviously, the workplace has been, traditionally the province of, the man of the household, the male of the household, and the, classical Mad Men style archetype is, you've got the woman at home. She's the homemaker and child rearer and child bearer. But yeah, obviously nowadays, we need to accommodate for people to, make whatever decisions they want regarding their careers. And so that means, employing maybe more creative ways of running a workspace. And that's exciting to like try kind of these new strategies of how we, go about running our businesses.
It really is like a slow, weird renaissance. I mean, I don't work in a corporation, but like Ryan does. So I've got to hear how things have kind of flexed and changed and almost not, I'm not saying like USAA is like super duper open-minded or whatever, but you do see these big businesses are at least reevaluating some of it, it seems like, I mean, again, they'll still probably send you off to Mars without any food or no tent, but I do think that our generation is coming into potentially, like Philip said, like creative options for the traditional workplace, whether it's like letting people work from home or letting them do 6-hour, 8-hour. Well, I don't know enough about it, but it does seem like there's been a little more give in all of that lately. I don't know. Does Godfrey work in a corporate space? Has he seen flexibility?
So yes and no. So he works for the US Patent Office. And so they're like the Department of Commerce. So they're like government employees.
Sounds corporate to me.
Yeah, they're like government employees and they're kind of corporate, but they're government employees. So it's like it's a different level of corporate. It's, I guess, government corporate. So so for them, I guess everyone had to work in Alexandria in Virginia. And then once COVID happened, like he got hired on during the pandemic. And so they were like, oh, there's a chance that we might make everyone come into the office. Then you would have to move to Virginia, which is fine because that's where he's from. But they were like, actually, like, it was like after a month or two after his training, they were like, actually, we decided people who are working from home, they can just work from home forever and that's fine.
Yeah, that's what they did with Ryan as well.
Yeah.
They're like, anyone who lives within 30 minutes of Tampa, like, get your booties back in the office. But then they went from like 4 days in the office to 3. And I feel like they're trying to listen to the demands of I don't know if you'd call it the millennial demands or what's under us, the Zers.
Gen Z. I think it's a mix. And that's something. So like when I left my job, so I left as soon as Godfrey got his job, because I was like, no, because so I worked from home with 2 kids for 2 years basically, and I was doing great, doing the best I'd ever done in my career. And then they were like, ooh, they said the pandemic's over now, so you guys have to work 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And I was like, no, I have been working in my pajamas, not washing my hair for months and months and months now. I'm not, well, and it's like, you don't even think about all the stuff you have to do, especially like as a parent. It's like, oh, I now have to get myself ready, get my kids ready, take one to school, take one to my parents, then go to work, drive to work, sit in traffic, go to work all day, and then sit in traffic again and pick everyone up and then come home and make dinner and go to sleep. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that. So I left there. And then, so basically I'm like technically a homemaker, but I do.
Oh, I love it. I love the air quotes.
Technically, well, because I am, but I work part-time as well. I do bookkeeping, but that's more for my sanity because I have to do more than just look at my kid all day. I would go crazy. Like Godfrey's here, but like not really. So like occasionally I'll be like, hey, what are you doing? I need to talk to an adult. And so, yeah, it's interesting, like twist. But so where I work part-time currently is like everyone works from home. None of us work in like an office. So it kind of works out. It's interesting, but I will say because so like currently in the workforce, there's 5 generations, which is like the most generations that's ever been within the workforce. So you have like, yeah. So you have the boomers, you have Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, and then who's above boomers? I can't remember what they're called.
Uh, the silent generation
I think that's what it was, because they were
or
like the Cold
something.
War. They're like the Cold War people.
Sure.
Because of the recession in 2009, a lot of people lost like retirements and stuff. So people are not leaving the workforce like sooner anymore, because and then retirement age gets pushed out. So you have like this huge like range of people, but the majority, like, they're going to start retiring, and then the bulk of people is going to be like Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, and then eventually Gen Alpha, which is very close. Apparently, my two kids are Gen Alphas. It's really weird. They just started over in the alphabet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, I think that we're definitely going to see a shift, I would say, within just work environments in general in the next like 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, because all the people who were working when it was like, the Mad Men-esque era, and like the men work out of the home, and you don't talk to your director at your job. You talk to your manager, and your manager will talk to them. Like there's like in the older generations, there's like a big like hierarchy of like respect, that you did not talk to people above you and stuff like that. Whereas like our generation is like, we see them as like an equal. Like I'll go talk to the director of my company and not think anything of it. I'm just like, hey, I have this idea I wanted to give to you. And so it's like, I actually worked with a lady who coached corporate offices on how to work together over the generations, because people who are 65 don't relate to people who are 21. And so they'd be like, how do we work with each other? And she would go and like work with them and their management teams. So I've listened to a lot of stuff about this. I could go on forever.
No, I mean, it actually all ties in with Fired from Mars, because it's like, not everybody's going to be a Jeff. Like, and it is going to have to flex and move, like you said, as these generations wave in and out. It's interesting.
Jeff, he can casually walk into Darren's office, and Darren's the head honcho of the whole Marsley operation on Mars. So yeah, there's at least formally accepted culture of openness at this organization, which is very commonplace within the modern business space. People talk about having an open door policy and everything. So it's just a way to, ostensibly to make people feel more democratized and equanimous, or no, or whatever I'm trying to fish for here. Yeah, to not make it seem like there's this oppressive hierarchy.
It sure ain't the money keeping people happy. Everybody's broke. So they've got to feel like they have something else coming out of it than like I don't know what the average income is, but clearly not enough.
It's a whole world, these large corporations, and a lot of it can be wasteful, where you just have people kind of not doing a whole lot but still able to get paid for it. So I mean, God bless them for just at least going, punching a clock, and showing up. I mean, we do hear a lot about like big corporate layoffs and stuff, so there's a certain risk with being a part of a company like that, where where
the AI is like stomping on in and like scooping up every last job. Like we could do a whole podcast episode of like Jody's fears of AI.
Well, unless they make like AI robots that look like princesses, you should be good.
Yeah, I'm probably good, but I don't even. It'll need to be its own episode, Bridget. Like, don't get me all riled up. My circadian rhythm is messed up.
Believe me, with my husband entering into doing art, he likes to draw on things. Him and I have had many discussions about AI and like AI art and things. He very much has a distaste for it, because they actually like make AI that can like sound like singers, like certain like singers and rappers, and then they basically just like have it create a song, and I'm like, no, let's not do that.
I heard of a thing where you can, I don't know if it's true or not, and this is gonna like spiral us off topic, but you can like put these goggles on, and basically AI will help you like fix your toilet. Like the goggles will show you like what steps to take, because it scans the toilet you have, and you like, I don't think people understand like how it's going to infiltrate so much, and like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
So you're
People-
saying we're going to be
yeah.
Iron Man. We're going to have Jarvis, is what you're telling me.
I just think like the skill set that like is required for jobs is going to like just change immensely. Like, I don't know if we're going to need so many truck drivers. I don't know if we're going to need so many, plumbers, even like
Yeah.
jobs like even like people, of course, obviously social media people, like they're gone. I do think there'll always need to be a human connection, but let me tell you, like Jeff's little office, like that could probably go from 700 people to like 70 with AI. That's what I think. But we'll see. I mean, we're going to live through it. That's the fun part.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm
I
very
mean,
interested to see what that's going to be like in the next like 30 years. We'll see how it.
people are going to have a hard time coping with the change, and there's going to be a lot of griping, from people who really only know to gripe because they have difficulty really even understanding why things are changing the way they are. But it's as long as people aren't like starving and dying in the street, if there's not this extreme scarcity that develops because there are fewer people working, then I mean, I feel like we can all find ways to derive purpose for our lives, whether we're working a formal job or not.
That's
Um,
true too. It's an opportunity to maybe, if people no longer are so needed for these types of jobs, as long as we can still provide for them the stability, like maybe we get the next Mozart or something, or an AI Mozart. I don't know.
That's what I was gonna say. I will say that, and I'd love to harp on capitalism, but really, it's like that. I think that maybe that could be an answer because it's like right now, it's like people are kind of forced to work, and they're kind of forced to work in things that they don't necessarily care about because like you have bills and you have to eat and you have to pay your ridiculous like rent or mortgage or whatever, and you have to do all this just to survive. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if like we were able to give some of these jobs to like AI or robots or whatever, would we have more time to do that, or would they just find like meaningless jobs to fill because it's like part of capitalism? It's like you got to grind. You have to make sure that everything that you're doing is worth this money we're giving you.
Stack
And so it's
rocks.
like yeah, like we're all gonna go live on Mars and work in a corporate office moving rocks. So it's like, would it be better? Would it be worse? Who knows? It could give us more time, which would be nice, as long as we're still getting paid for that time.
Maybe that's what they're testing the tanks for. I guess one way to deal with this existential, loss of purpose, um, as we see demonstrated by Jeff, it's going out and just doing hard manual labor for very little discernible reason. Or if we choose, we could also opt for the sleep tank and just live in a virtual space for extended periods of time if we feel like our lives are lacking purpose within within reality, within actual space. Kind of similar to like the total recall concept where you're hooking yourself up to a machine, getting memories implanted in you and doing all that.
That's what I was saying. Like maybe like VR. Like what was
It
what's
all
the
comes
movie?
back to Don't
The
Worry,
VR
Darling.
movie?
Oh,
Don't Worry, Darling.
There's that.
No.
There's
it's the video
Ready
game.
Player. Yeah,
Yes, Ready Player One, where they basically like live in the slums, but then you go into the VR like reality and you're like in this cool game and you're doing all kinds of cool stuff. And you have like you look different and like you could do whatever you want because you're in virtual reality. That's what it is. You go into cryo sleep and you just live in virtual reality.
You know what's so bizarre? There was a poet from like forever ago, and I was reading about him now. I can't remember his name, but he was like adamant that when you're dreaming, if you can convince yourself while you're dreaming that that is reality, like that is your best life. So basically, he would write poems about his dreams while he was awake, and he'd eat like very little and then a lot right before bed so he could sleep as long as he could. He basically a lucid dreaming style.
Sure.
And it's funny how like yeah, that very much could be. I mean, this is something people probably talk about all the time, but if perception's reality, like why not? Like, is that any better or worse than being a graphic designer on Mars? Like, no, not to me.
No, it's sort of alternate dimension sort of lifestyle you could possibly live within a dream space. I mean, you can't really scientifically prove whether that reality is any less valid than the one we're in now. It would seem to be, just based on how dreams often tend to change arbitrarily as you're in them. And like, whereas in our reality, things aren't suddenly morphing and one person doesn't randomly turn into another person like they often do in dreams. I mean, do you find that to be the case in a lot of dreams? Like you'll be in one situation.
It depends on the dream. Yeah. I would say so I like to do this thing because I'm a weirdo, that when I'm having a dream and I'm not sure if it's like real or not. And I got it from Morbid. I got it from the Morbid podcast. You ask the people, what's the date? Ask them what day it is. And the people in your dream are like, what? And they will not tell you the date. And like, because I was like listening to it and they were like, yeah, like in my dream, they got like angry. The people in my dream were like angry and they're like, why would you ask that? And they're like, what's the date? And
my dreams are not that, I can't control them to that capacity, I don't think. Like my mom can, she can kind of control her dreams like that, where she's like, she can make herself fly or she can ask a question. But I feel like in my dreams, I'm pretty much like experiencing them. I'm not directing. Like, so that's cool to me that other people's brains give them sort of like the autonomy to like mess around or like, I don't know. That's cool.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, sometimes the dream is just weird. And then I wake up and I'm like, okay, I thought it was a dream. But there are some dreams that it's like, it's like, have you ever had the dream where you're in your house, but the house that you're in is not your house?
Oh, yeah.
That you live in. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many dreams I have like that. And like really weird things are happening. And I'm like, okay, I know this isn't real. This is not a real dream. I'm clearly still asleep. And so, yeah, I'll just do weird stuff. And then eventually, like, I wake up. Especially like, bad dreams. I do it with bad dreams for sure. I'm like, I do not like what's happening. You need to wake up now. We're waking up. And I'll like wake up in a sweat and I'm like, I was right.
But I guess if you're lucid enough to like remember detail afterwards, then you might be lucid enough to point out when things, are behaving strangely. Yeah. If you're in a house that you're meant to think it's your house, but it clearly, it doesn't resemble your real house, or things are constantly changing around as you're walking through. None of the spatial dynamics make any sense as you're kind of passing from one room to the next. So things like that, seem to be commonplace for me, like when I'm dreaming, but for whatever reason, my mind isn't cognizant enough to notice as I'm in it. I'm just kind of accepting of the reality as it's presented. And it's only if I'm particularly lucid that I might find it disconcerting. And if that's the case, then I'll probably just wake up.
Yeah, that's one thing. If it's a scary dream, because occasionally, you have a good scary dream, and yeah, it's like I'm like, nope, I don't like this. You gotta wake up now. Like, wake up.
It's like, I know this isn't, I don't know. Thankfully, I don't have too much trouble sleeping, and I don't find myself in like uncomfortable dreams very often. But normally it's the worse it gets is like flashbacks to the school, and I haven't done an assignment or something. But when that happens, it's such a relief when I wake up and realize that, none of this stuff matters that I was so paranoid about in my actual dream.
Oh yeah, no, my last dream like that was that I did not wake up in time to go to a princess party.
Yeah. Oh, that's my nightmare.
Yeah. And it was so funny though, because it's because I hadn't done one in a little bit. And so I was like, okay, you have to like, start getting ready at 10 tomorrow and for this party at noon. And it was for people we knew. And like in my dream, like me and the other princess girls were like hanging out with the family. And then I was like, oh crap, I missed your party. And they were like, it's fine. Just come tomorrow as the princess. It's no big deal. I woke up in a panic. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, okay. Like I was just super paranoid that I was just like going to miss it for some reason. Dreams work weird in weird ways.
Well, cool. You know, what else can we discuss here? Probably about ready to wrap things up, but yeah.
We got off on a tangent earlier. So comfort shows, The Office, Parks and Rec, Bee and Puppy Cat. It's on Netflix.
How did you remember that was our tangent from like 40 minutes ago, Bridget? I took
my meds earlier. That's fine. Well, because I was like, we like got off on a tangent, and I was like, what I was gonna say though is that kind of like with Philip, what Philip was saying, like I'm not watching a ton of stuff. I'm mostly like, listening to YouTube while I'm doing stuff or listening to podcasts. And honestly, I think it's because of streaming services. I think it's because there's so many options that I go on there and I'm like, I don't want to watch any of this. And I'm like, maybe it's just like, it's almost overwhelming the amount of choice you have now with all the streaming options. So I tend to default to watching a comfort show or listening to people talk on YouTube or like in a podcast versus like, and they'll talk about things I've already watched. Like I listen to people talk about like the Ghibli films. And like Sarah Zed, she's the one who did the thing. What is it? Well, it's Zed because she's in Canada, but it's Sarah Z.
She
on
recently
YouTube.
like did an episode. Well, I don't know if it was her. Was it on AI girlfriends or something? Was that her? I've seen it recommended on something.
Yeah, she was the one that I listened to where she talked about the like the Hunger Games and Divergent and all that.
Okay.
That's
Video essays.
So she does a bunch of like video essays about like movies and shows, and so I like listening to her. I listen to like Cinema Therapy. I don't know if you've watched that. They do a lot of like Pixar movies and Disney movies, and they talk about the therapy behind it, which I also like. And then you end up like crying with them, and it's a great time. It depends on my mood. But yeah, so I'm like, because there's like so many options, I have a tendency to default to like these comfort things. So like Bee and Puppy Cat and The Office and Parks and Rec, I've watched 1,100,000 times, and half the time I'm not even like actually watching them. It's just like for background noise.
Yeah, I guess sometimes with like white noise or these things that you have on in the background, they can be distracting, but they can also be focusing in a way. They sort of catalyze your attention in a way that you can focus more easily on a specific task because there's only sort of one thing in the background that might be pulling at your attention rather than any number of things, whether they're thoughts or sounds, or just uncomfortable silence.
I always told myself, like, if I was working in a true office, like I would have background chatter and talk. So that makes me feel like a little better about like keeping something playing in the background.
Yeah, I mean, you really do.
Yeah, things that require a more intense kind of creative draw of your mental faculties, though, I think people will say, these are best done in complete silence. Something like, animating, if you're working at an animation studio or painting or just things that are fairly intense acts of creation, acts of labor that require a very strong mental component as well as a physical and dexterous.
But when you're unwrapping 300 tiaras, then you can just play the music, right?
So
if it's something that's brainless, yeah.
If you're not, yeah.
I agree. You don't want to shake off your like creative conscious when you're, trying to maybe do something that takes a little more of your.
There is one thing I heard recently where if your brain, it can substitute. So I think a lot of times when I'm constantly craving listening to podcasts or some kind of piece of informational educational media, I'm wanting to learn something new, and my mind's craving novelty in a way, or else reconnecting with things that feel like they're adding freshness to my life or something. I want to relive, nostalgia, novelty. I think these things fill up a similar need for us psychologically. And then there's another thing that can also occupy that space, which is nuance. So it's even simple tasks like unwrapping tiaras. I think you can find, like, if it's super boring and just monotonous, there's often ways you can still find interesting aspects of a mundane task that help you, like, even more efficiently perform that task, like a specific technique for unwrapping. And you'll watch maybe some of these TikTok videos where it's just a very satisfying way in which somebody's performing a task very efficiently. And it's like, a chef, chopping sushi or something, or just general cooking videos of a person chopping vegetables or something. Like, the way they're able to do so just so adeptly. That's when you're just focusing on something without distractions, and you eventually develop those skills by just gradually finding more and more aspects of that task that you're becoming fixated on and then mastering, one by one.
They say that with exercising too, when it comes to like weightlifting and stuff, that playing music you might do more, but not listening to music you do more correctly. Does that make sense? Like, the music might like have you run like 1 mile further, but your form when running without the music, your body will try to correct it. Like, I've heard things about that. So it's like, if you're new to lifting weights, like, you shouldn't be like just listening to music or whatever, because you need to be in tune with the teeny tiny ways your bodies are talking to you, like to loosen your neck or to like drop your shoulders or whatever. That's really important, because so many people want to go in there and just like blast their stuff. But like, when it comes to certain, I mean, a lot of different exercise, it one little adjustment can make a huge difference in the, I'm not a worker outer, so like, don't listen to me, but you know what I'm saying, where it's like listening to your body is a big thing.
Yeah, if we can learn to appreciate the nuances of things in general, it can really enrich our lives, in my opinion. and there seems to be a lot of research to back it up as well.
Well, I was gonna say, I can't say too much, because when I do go to the gym, I do need music, or I'm like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? I could leave. I'm like, I need to listen to Megan Thee Stallion while I'm on this treadmill for the next 15 minutes.
That was what really allowed me to appreciate music, though, too, especially like I did a lot of rideshare living in LA, and getting to know the nuances of songs that I liked. It was, interesting how oftentimes I would find myself appreciating certain pieces of music more and more the more I listened to them, rather than, getting sick of them after hearing them so many times. It was a nice kind of contrast to how I had normally thought about listening to music, where, if I wear out a song too much, then I'll not really care to listen to it anymore. But there were plenty of exceptions where, certain favorites would almost never fail to, excite me whenever they came on the rotation. And I just think there's just certain things that will do that for us. It's like finding, the perfect partner in life, the true love of, of finding, the what is it, your soulmate, can be reached with certain things that you just never tire of. And that's by just getting to know these things more and more deeply, more, having more and more things about them that you can discover and appreciate how they affect you. I'm talking about songs here, but this can just as easily apply to relationships or activities.
Yeah, anything where you think you might already know it, like
Yeah.
maybe you don't if you're not like paying attention. I hear what you're saying and I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work. And, humans are, very mercurial and fickle. And, we only have so much time for certain things. And there are lots of, a lot of songs that are popular, for example, that I've just never, I feel like I've heard them a million times and they never get more appealing to me, despite
See, I
that.
think the radio has killed that for me because, like, at least the local channels, they literally just play the songs on a loop. So, like, I take my daughter to school every day and I pick her up every day, and the same time every day they play the same songs. And I'm like, man, I liked this song, but like now I don't. So I have to I'm like, okay, I guess it's a Spotify day because I cannot hear the song again or I will lose
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
That's why I just listen to you guys on the podcast when I don't get to hop on. Like I get to be the little listener. Then I get to
Yeah.
talk to myself and be like, no, no, Bridget, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Everything you said about the Mandalorian, wrong.
We're making this conversation, public for mass consumption. But I honestly, yeah, I'm mainly deriving value from just being able to hash out these various things that I hear, randomly throughout my day, on podcasts or wherever. Just these things that kind of float around the zeitgeist, things that as we just learn more and more about the weird ways our human psychology copes with our modern reality, why certain self-help strategies seem to work and most don't. But thanks, Jody and Bridget, for being willing to come on and really just like kind of I don't
Talk
know.
about Fired from Mars. That's what we would, but
Yeah.
no, I agree. Well, when you
Yeah.
start talking about sci-fi and you start talking about work culture, like it's going to spiral out of control. Like
Yeah, just
it's good
really.
thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to know. I was going to say, I'm excited to know where the bananas are going.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there is each episode, I feel like this show doesn't have to end on a cliffhanger, but each episode has thus far.
Mhm.
And one of the cliffhangers, has kind of been regarding this, secret group people.
Yeah.
But
Space cult,
yeah,
space cult, space cult.
that's
Like
another one.
yeah, he fell into that room and I was like, oh yeah, there's a secret group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how they're like, oh yeah, we should just kill him. And then they were like, oh, he didn't tell on us. I guess you can stay. I
He
guess
can
it's
join our
fine.
cult. Like
Yeah, you can come on board.
See,
We'll watch. They're probably the movers and shakers who are like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna overthrow Marsley.
Why we're called the Thodcast. There's no topic off limits. Just everything and everything can just kind of melt together into one giant pot.
melt.
Psychology and cults, and yeah, it's our own little time to kind of vent and have our mini meltdown if we want to. At least for me. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else interesting going? So it's a big month of pop culture, of course. May the 4th be with you. It's we've got new Guardians of the Galaxy movie coming up, so
We got the
switching
Barbie
gears.
movie coming up.
Yeah, switching
Barbie
gears
movie.
That's
to
Barbie movie, Philip. Can we do that like the
fun
day
stuff.
after it comes out? Maybe Bridget, you, me, Godfrey, Ryan, we can go on like early and then
Yes.
Philip go early so we can talk on that. I know it's not animated, but it's come on, it's Barbie.
It's
Oh,
Barbie.
yeah.
Barbie.
She's a whole movement.
You guys are excited about it, so that means I am too. Yeah, I'll happily have you guys on for some Barbie talk if that's what y'all want to do. That sounds awesome. I'm assuming you guys are wanting to do Little Mermaid as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for this new Guardians movie. It's the third one. It comes out soon, this week as of recording. But I don't know. Do you guys deal with certain like costume events where there are like superheroes present? But how familiar are you with with like the Guardians of the Galaxy, Jodie specifically?
My understanding is very limited, but I do have friends who like work in those little worlds at Disney. So I guess I have a bit of it, but I haven't seen any of the movies. I do
Yeah.
know the characters though, just because they've become kind of staples with like Hollywood studios and the Disney
Yeah, the
genre.
rides too. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I see if you've seen like the big Marvel movies, like for the most part, the characters are in that movie.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Groot.
So I hear this one's supposed to be good, so I don't know. I'd probably be interested in talking about it on the show, but we'll see. See what everyone's schedules are like. But yeah, I'm looking forward to any number of things that are. It was kind of nice having a little time to explore and discover something new. Keep wanting to say fired from Mars, which would see. It's if you are on Mars and unemployed, like, can they call a rocket? And are they sending people back
No,
and
it's a
forth?
one-way trip.
No,
No,
yeah,
you can't.
I thought that
Yeah.
too. I'm like, you can't just send them back. And I'm pretty sure that there's like, no, you like die or become like a sewer person. I'm assuming that's where the bananas are going. It's like all the people who've ever been fired and they're like living under that. That's my theory. That's my theory that I'm going with.
Yeah, I do get the sense that the show isn't going to venture into anything too dark, although it has teased things like that, but it often subverts it in a way. So I don't know. I hope it doesn't get ultra sinister, because I think it makes it, hashtag relatable. It's we don't really. I think it's more fun when we have this dystopian kind of newspeak situation, and it isn't quite so overtly like malicious, murderous, people just plotting any kind of means of expediency, playing with people's lives. But we'll see if it gets into that kind of territory. They might need to keep it fresh as the show goes along.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if they're living under the company, at least they're not dead.
Yeah.
My theory saves people.
Do you think that some of these corporate stooges have, I don't know, murderous intent or are capable of such?
I mean, the end of that fourth episode really has me up in the air because they're wearing those like weird cult cloaks. Like, I think we're gonna have to reconvene after a few more episodes drop and kind of see where we're at.
Yeah, like I have a feeling that it's probably more like secret society type stuff than like murderous cult.
Yeah,
that's my like. I have a feeling that it's going to be kind of like a coup kind of thing where they're like, we don't like how you guys are running it, and this is what we want kind of thing, based on the characters that are in it that we've seen so far. And that's why I'm like, I don't know that they're necessarily murderous. It's just like, and I mean, this is like anyone in the corporation, but it's one of those things that they're like, yeah, you are expendable. If you are too much of a problem, we will handle it. But we're gonna try and like put you to sleep first, at least.
Yeah.
Because they tried, he did die and they brought him back. So clearly they didn't want to kill him.
Yeah, there's ways to stage accidents, no matter.
You could get decapitated by gravity. So.
Yeah. No matter how accidental these things seem, they can be arranged, I'm sure. The gravity accident, him getting sucked out the airlock, the tank malfunctioning. Thank goodness, they do have medical staff though present that, they're just going to do their job to save him. So, I guess in that kind of situation, you could always get the word from higher up. No, surgeon, this is a DNR situation. You can step back, and we'll just let this unruly employee just kind of expire passively on the table, because he or she has not been fulfilling the vision of the corporation adequately.
They're like, see, they signed the DNR.
Yeah,
they signed it.
So that kind of, I like that kind of underhandedness more so than just the overt mustache twirling in this kind of scenario. Obviously, we need still space for the over the top broad villains of classic Disney animation, or Star Wars, the Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader, or Star Trek, people like Khan. But yeah, you insert think piece where people will complain about all the infiltration of nuanced Disney villains, because when you have to make all the villains traumatized and relatable, and psychoanalyze them constantly.
Yeah, I like a villain who's just a villain because they're a villain.
Yeah,
they're not like like Thanos. It was like, oh yeah, like I can kind of see what he's coming from. Okay, like I'm like, I don't need to understand the villain. Just be a bad guy, and that's fine.
Yeah.
We don't need a generational trauma villain. Just don't.
More
Just
Jack
give me a
Horners.
villain. Yeah.
More
give
Jack
me like
Horners
a Joker. Yeah. Give me a Joker. Give me a Jack Horner. Like sometimes people can just be bad, and I like that.
More Heath Ledger Jokers, fewer Joaquin Phoenix Jokers.
I was gonna say, I was like, maybe you forgot the newer Joker movie, because
I haven't watched it.
Oh, don't. I think we've told you already before, but like before we log off, I'm gonna tell you again. Unless you're like in a good headspace, like don't watch that movie, because I was in a bad headspace, and I swear for like 3 days I felt like not good about life.
He said, I'm not feeling great.
Yeah, I was not feeling great. So, I mean, I don't know. Be sure you can snuggle your kids afterwards or something.
I wasn't. I like, and it got so much hype. Like sometimes I feel like if some things get like so much hype that I'm like, actually, I don't want to watch it. Like Bird Box, I never watched Bird Box.
If you want a less, well, if you want a less kind of cynical, polished corporate product version of Joker, you just watch Taxi Driver, like the original.
Yeah, Robert De Niro.
Yeah, Robert De Niro, exactly. Martin Scorsese. I mean, that's what Joker is trying to play off of, and it's fairly successful, but it's still got that veneer of, oh, this is a DC comics property.
Yeah, and I was like, I probably should watch it at some point, because I know Lady Gaga is Harley Quinn in the next one, or the version of her. So I'm like, I just feel like they should just be evil because they're evil. I don't need to know your tortured backstory. Just be bad.
I did an episode on Joker with my brother a few years back, so you could listen to that to at least after you've watched it, you can listen to because that's how I get enticed to watch films nowadays, is if like a podcast or a YouTube channel that I like is covering a movie, then I'll rent the film on streaming, or try to find it streaming somewhere, and then check out the commentary afterwards.
Yeah, and then you have to watch, like, I always, well, if we've like watched something that we like kind of avoid watching, or like just didn't end up watching kind of thing. I didn't avoid watching it, I just never ended up watching it. Like I'll do that, and then I'll go back and I'll like listen to what people had to say about it, and then be like, I agree with that.
Yeah, generally
usually like I avoided it for a reason.
I enjoy that part of the process more than actually watching the thing in many cases. Like even this latest like Evil Dead movie that's out in theaters. I went to see that because one of my favorite YouTube channels was reviewing it, and so I wanted to just make sure I knew all the details of what they were discussing.
You got influenced, dude.
Yeah, I did.
In a good way, though. There's great influencers out there, so.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's a way to like, continue one's film education. You follow along like a book club. You're watching the new film each week that's being covered on the latest episode. So that's the idea. Well, anyways,
I mean, that's how I ended up watching the show. I hadn't heard of it before you were like, hey, you should watch it. And I was like, okay, I guess I will.
Yeah, this is my book club. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I don't have time for books, but I can watch things.
Yeah, any final thoughts? Start with you, Bridget.
So I will say, so it's an amusing show. I don't hate Jeff. I was worried that I would in the beginning, but he's gotten better. I will say, from a marketing standpoint, when they do the flashback and Hannah is talking about their carbon footprint and they're like, oh, we've made these Marsley shoes and it has the footprint and it's like, you're leaving your footprint wherever you go. It does absolutely nothing for the carbon footprint. It means nothing, but it just makes people feel better. And I'm like, that, I cackled. I was like, that is marketing to a T.
Oh,
and
honey.
I marked, yeah.
I was dying because like Mountain Dew bottles or Sprite bottles, whatever, whichever ones were like green, they switched them to clear for the planet. But just because they're harder to see as litter, so that people don't feel like they're seeing so many Mountain Dew bottles like out in the ocean or out on the streets, it's like now that they're clear. So it's like one of those things where it's like, dude, like you're not lessening your carbon footprint, you little scammers.
My gosh. Okay, I will probably cut parts of this episode because we've gone on. I've done an excessive amount of rambling, and it's depressing.
Yeah, you can cut all my parts out.
No, you guys have been great. You guys, I've just been kind of listless at times, though I know today. But no, it's good. I just have to mention part of when I was being kept up the other night, I was on this thought spiral of how to solve. It was very similar. You know how at Starbucks, they, if you get a discount if you bring in your own personal beverage container, bring in a personal cup, save 10 cents. And, they want people to push sustainability. But if you mobile order, you always get one of their disposable cups. And I like to use their mobile order because I don't wake up early enough to get there in time to place an in-person order to use my personal. And I actually only have like 20-ounce hot Yeti mugs, to-go mug. I actually just got today a 12-ounce hot to-go mug. So now I can actually get the discount on a 12-ounce drink and not feel stupid being like, can you only put like
but only if you show up in time.
Put a tall in my 20-ounce container that's actually a venti. It's like, I don't want to give them the hassle of that. Well, yeah, I'll just have to get up earlier so I can get the discount. And you also get bonus points at Starbucks. But I was like, they were thinking about unrolling this plan of they would have like a reusable container to put people's to-go orders in, and then people would just transfer from the Starbucks reusable container to their own personal cups. But how would you do that? Because like, what if people stole the reusable Starbucks cups, and would you like attach a tether to them, or how would you keep
this is
the
how a
loss
brain
prevention
spiral works?
I solved it though. I like solved it because a lot of places you do like a check-in. You could do that once you get to Starbucks. You could check in so that they know to put it out because you're there. Or they could just, I don't know, you have like a tether thing that they attach to it. I don't know, it's all designed to streamline. Yeah.
Well, if it was tethered, how would you clean it out?
Just have like a very simple like RFID,
you have like a thing
like
you
a
could
little
like
key.
push down on.
Yeah, or a button. There's a button behind the counter that the employees can access that releases the tether. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But
I do the same thing the night before the ball. I'm like, wait a minute, what if the chairs were on the left of the room instead of the right? And like literally in my head, I start moving everything around in the ballroom. I start like moving the tables, and then I get there in the morning and I'm like, why did I waste 4 hours of like my night thinking about this? It's fine how it is. So I've been there.
Yeah, and I'm sick of wasting these disposable these coffee
100%.
cups. Yeah, because I'm transferring them to my own, because they don't stay warm in the Starbucks cups. My Yeti mug works so great at like, it's it'll be noon and I take a sip from my latte and it's still like warm, which is a miracle. But I want to be able to do that without using up a piece of cardboard every time.
Yeah, well, that when that happened, I was like, oh, that's so funny. Because when I worked in marketing, like we didn't do anything like that because I worked for a sportswear company, and so, but it was just like, oh, it's this and that, and it's the best we've ever had, and you just like, it's all this like flowery, like just bull crap. It's like, do you want this shirt? The end.
I had a problem though with a drive-through because they don't like to touch lids, and I understand that. I don't think the employees should touch lids, but if you're handing off an unlidded container from the drive-through window to the person in the car, high chance of spill. So how do you get around that? And
Where
I
does
came
it
up
use
with
a lid?
you could make like a really cheap disposable hemp lid that you stick over the personal cup, and if you slightly tip it, like it's absorbent enough to prevent spillage of just any slight contact with the beverage inside. So like it's almost like, think of a ketchup cup that you get at a McDonald's or something. It's sort of like that similar design, but bigger, and then you put it over, the personal cup, and then that sort of helps prevent the liquid inside from spilling over the top, because it sort of semi attaches to the top. I don't know. It's just the craziest things that you think of when your mind
Where
is going
I
crazy.
want to know, I want to know where you went, where they didn't give you a lid.
Well, I was just thinking of like using your personal cup at the drive-through.
Oh, okay, okay. Because I was
Because
like, where are you going where they don't give you a lid at the restaurant? Because I am
okay,
perplexed. What are they doing up there?
well, at Starbucks, you hand them your personal cup, but they say you hold on to the lid because lids can be
Mm.
janky and dirty.
Okay, I
Um,
thought you meant like you went to McDonald's and they just handed you a cup with no lid.
no, typically, yeah, you don't. That doesn't happen unless you
Yeah.
request it, I suppose. But yeah, just if you're using a personal cup at the drive-through, you would hand the barista your cup through the window, but without the lid because they don't want to touch the lid. But then they would have to hand it to you back,
Mm.
and what if it spills on the way over? Even if they slightly, tip it or something.
That's the risk you assume using your own cup, trying to save
Exactly.
the environment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I just wanted to try to avoid as many catastrophes as possible, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny. Well, and it's so funny because like we were saying when they're like the Mountain Dew bottles, when it's like, oh yeah,
Uh,
we're helping the environment. But like 9 times out of 10, like a lot of really big corporations, they push all of it onto the consumer. Like this is how you can do this. This is how you can do this. And I'm like, well, you could do it like from the beginning in a better, more sustainable way.
Or y'all could just like pay your taxes and then your tax money could go to projects that better the planet. But like,
mhm.
Like, yeah, like if they made it more sustainable from the beginning, it wouldn't be like, oh, make sure that you're recycling all your plastic bags and blah 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 blah. Because like it needs to happen on a large scale for it to be
Mhm.
to do any change. Like me being like, I only use paper straws or I only use steel straws now.
Mhm.
I am not changing much in the world other than maybe I feel
Yeah,
better.
at the consumer level, oh, it's also in completely, almost completely, um, negligible at the consumer level. But the idea is you get people thinking about these things at
Yeah.
least, and that sort of consciousness, that ecological consciousness, will permeate the society and the culture, so that it'll sort of balloon outward into people's general approaches to more scaled implementation of these strategies, more sustainable strategies, like how airline, so much of our fossil fuel consumption is, it's industrial waste, it's airlines, compared to cars and people, just regular consumers. And so, if we want there to be sustainable change, it has to occur at this sort of industrial scale rather than just people drinking Mountain Dew.
Yeah, and that's always my thing. I'm like yeah, it's nice to recycle and do those things and like want to
Mhm.
have a better environment like in your general vicinity. But like
Mhm.
when corporations press stuff like that, it's like you're just trying to remove the responsibility from you guys, like making it a better process and
Mhm.
making it healthier for the environment and like putting less waste out into the world because they're
Yeah.
like, yes, you guys make sure you recycle your bottles, but here's 100 million clear bottles for you so you don't feel bad and you have your Mountain Dew.
Yeah,
So
it needs
yeah,
to come from all the sides.
yeah, and so I believe me, we talk a lot about the climate and recycling in this house. So
Okay.
I could go
Yeah.
on and on and on. So I will stop. But the marketing though, with the carbon footprint, tickled
Mhm.
the crap out of me because I'm like, from a marketing standpoint and a climate standpoint, it's like, we care about the carbon footprint so much that here's some shoes
for you to consume,
for you to wear, for you to put your carbon footprint everywhere. And I'm like, this does nothing for the environment. And it's like, honestly, why they're all having to move to Mars and work in a corporation.
I know, exactly.
Yeah. Jody, any final thoughts?
I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed our chats, and I'm probably gonna finish out this series, at least this first season. I hope, I agree with you. I hope they don't take it into some far super reach place. I kind of hope they follow this type of flow, because I'm enjoying it a lot where we're at.
Yeah, nice to have a serialized narrative that continues from episode to episode, and in an animated form. That's always fun to kind of be able to live in this surprisingly realistically drawn world, but still, it being animation, there are plenty of things that can be exaggerated for our enjoyment. So check out Idiocracy. Check out Fired on Mars on HBO Max, soon to be renamed just Max. But yeah,
and marvel at how Luke Wilson, I never realized, like, I know that him and Owen Wilson are siblings, but you can just marvel at how much they sound alike. I always forget.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, Luke Wilson kind of just playing Joe Blow in a comedy, which he does, I don't know, fairly, he's done a few times. All right, well, this has been the Thodcast, conversations about animation. I'm Philip Elke. You can find the Thodcast at thodcast.com, at Thodcast on Twitter and Instagram. And find me at Philip Elke on Twitter and Instagram as well. Bridget, any social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's Bridget, that's Bridge with a T, 5246.
And Jody?
I'm nowhere to be found right now, so you can find me back on the Thodcast hopefully soon, talking about all the May things.
All right, it's Mermay.
Yeah.
Mermay. All right, well, everyone out there, thanks for listening. Have a magical day. Have a wonderful week. Warm hugs.